Rightio, welcome back to my shed. Today we're going to be reviewing the Qiaodan Leili 1.0, or as it's sometimes known, the TG 1.0. I've had a lot of requests for a shoe like this, a max cushion trainer, something which is a bit softer, a bit more compliant, a bit more compressive, and we finally got one which I think is matching up to that description quite nicely. So I want to run through what I've enjoyed about this shoe, going top to bottom, chatting about the price point, and then also getting into some comparisons to help you understand exactly what this shoe is and whether it's the right one for you. We'll start off, as always, with some specs. We've got 42mm of foam here in the heel with a 7mm drop down to 35 in the forefoot, which is quite generous for a fair few of these Chinese trainers. We have an EVA PIBA blend here, which they're calling their Kung Fu Pro midsole foam, which is a little bit confusing because their racing shoes are using some TPEEs in the past, but also now a PIBA foam in the Qiaodan Fang Plaid 2. So it seems to be a kind of meaning for their super foam, I guess, or some of their advanced technologies. It doesn't necessarily mean TPEE. Here, I would say it's one of the more compressive PIBA blends that I've felt. Certainly softer than the PIBA blend that you get in the Rebel V5 from New Balance, but also a little bit more energetic. Does that mean that there's more EVA or more PIBA? Wouldn't have a clue. I don't know what the proportions would be, but it is quite an energetic, soft, compressive foam, coming in at a pretty decent weight as well in my men's size 10.5 at around 270 grams, which is pretty good to see. That's about 30 grams more than an Evo SL, 20 grams more than a Novablast 5. In terms of the upper of this shoe, it's pretty simple, not a heap to talk about here. A reasonably structured heel counter, which I found it pretty easy to lock into. Not overly padded back there, enough to be a max cushion trainer, but nothing crazy like a Nimbus from Asics. The tongue, reasonably padded, it is gusseted on both sides with a lace loop, which I like to see. I'm not persuaded on these laces. They are this kind of flat lace, but also with this kind of I don't even know what you would call that, like knobby pattern to it. They do lace up okay, but a little bit of a weird feeling over the top of the foot. I found the lockdown to be reasonably easy to find. The eyelet chain does a good job, fairly stiff overlaid through there, but the rest of the material is reasonably flexible. I would say the breathability here is okay. It's definitely not as good as some of the more kind of performance-based models, but I didn't find it too sweaty in the last couple of weeks as things have started to warm up, but I'm not putting a heap of confidence in it as we move into summer here, hence why I've gone for the white colorway. In terms of the fit and sizing, I would say true to size with your Western brands is probably the way to go. I have been going for size 10.5 with a lot of my Qiaodan models, including the Fang Plaid 2 and the PB 5. I went 10.5 and I was pretty happy with that. I think I did the same for the Wind 3TR. So I do think you should go with your standard size, or in other words, if you float between half sizes, maybe the bigger one this time around could be the way to go. I found that I've got enough room ahead of the toes, but definitely not as much as I would like to go that half size down and be comfortable. In terms of the width, through the toe box, it does swoop in a little bit on the lateral side here. So I'm going to suggest this is not a wide forefoot friendly max cushion model, but I do think it is roomy as far as a lot of these Chinese trainers go. I would say standard to a little bit roomier is probably a good description compared to the Western trainers that we all usually use. For the upper overall, I've been pretty happy. It's fairly simple, straightforward, locks down well, pretty comfortable, no issues so far. Moving down to the midsole, this big slab of PIBA blend foam had me a little bit worried at first. I'm someone who doesn't absolutely love the max cushion kind of silhouette, I guess is the way to describe it. I am much more attracted to shoes which are a little bit snappier, a little bit firmer, and do tend to turn over a bit quicker. I've had some really bad experiences in the Novablast 5. I always have a rant about that in my reviews. I think that's the worst shoe I've ever reviewed, honestly. It just felt like absolute mush underfoot. I didn't feel like I could get any transition out of it because I was just sinking into the foam so horribly. When I took my first couple of steps in this shoe, I was really stressed. I usually, when I get my new pair of shoes, will take them out onto the street and do a few strides just to kind of see what they're about before my run the next morning. And yeah, I was thinking I was going to get another dud Novablast 5 kind of shoe, I guess, but I was pleasantly proved wrong. This EVA PIBA blend has a lot of bounce to it once you kind of get it through the first 1 or 2 Ks, it really starts to open up. It's soft, it's compressive, it's very smooth. It finds a really nice balance between rock ring, but also a bit of compression to bring you through the shoe. And I actually found it to be quite energetic and quite fun in some cases as well. I do think overall it is definitely leaning more into the kind of max cushion comfortable side of things. I wouldn't say that this is full Evo SL competitor where you're going to be taking it for your borderline threshold and tempo sessions. I don't think it's quite that energetic, but it didn't feel like it was lagging behind for my daily training, which is something that I'm always searching for. My least favorite type of shoe is a big, blocky max cushion shoe, which I can only tick along in for 40 minutes at a really, really slow pace before it just gets too much. And so this is the kind of solution to that, where I've got the softness, I've got the protection underfoot, but then it does have a bit of up and go to it at a decent weight as well, which I think all brands should be striving towards at the moment when we've got access to so many good midsole technologies. So far, I think this has been one of my favorite high cushion shoes this year. Definitely the best high cushion shoe that I've found in the Chinese market so far. I guess you could call the BMAI Expedition 6 a high cushion shoe, but that came through very different style, a bit firmer, a bit snappier. So this is the first kind of compressive, soft, almost recognizable max cushion shoe that I've found on the Chinese market. And I've been pretty happy. I think the ideal run for me in this shoe is an hour easy, ticking the legs over, probably when they're feeling a little bit sore. So day after a gym session, I'll throw this on and it still feels good. So it's a bit of a conundrum for me because some max cushion shoes I chuck on when the legs are feeling sore, and because they're so heavy and because they can be really soft, I always feel like I can sometimes get lost in the shoe because my legs are sore. I haven't got that elasticity to kind of turn them over. So I don't really know what I want to wear for a recovery day. This is the shoe that I've been liking because it does have a bit of spring back, a bit of oomph, a bit of go, and it's a decent weight, but then it does have that protective feel. It is very soft and smooth. In terms of the stability of this shoe, I think it's okay. I'm not going to put any big claims out there. Reasonable surface area, bit of midsole sidewalls through the heel. It's beveled quite nicely, and I think the softness does mean that there's not this kind of hard impact or this kind of blunt force when you're landing on the road. It does kind of absorb quite nicely, and I think it is quite a smooth transition from heel to toe. So I do think that is playing into its favor, but the softness of the foam, I'm going to admit, will compress if you put a heap of force through it. If you have a bit more weight behind you, I'm not going to be putting a lot of money on this shoe holding out and kind of resisting those motions if that's something that you're concerned about. So mild stability problems, maybe, but big stability problems, there's going to be much better shoes out there which are a bit more structured, a bit more firm, and should be able to handle everything that you need. Really happy with how this shoe has performed. I think this is a really nice kind of hybrid between a more fun daily trainer and a soft, comfy max cushion shoe. I think it's executed really nicely. I was really surprised by the paper blend, honestly. I have in the past kind of said that I would much prefer them to just go for a full PEBA or a full TPU or a full TPEE. I haven't really been impressed with PEBA blends in the past, mainly because of New Balance. I just haven't really got along with a lot of their fuel cell models. So it's kind of nice to see that there is an application out there which comes across in quite a nice way. And I do actually feel like it is purposeful in the blending. I do think that the extra softness and a little bit of extra compression does help in kind of keeping it in that training attitude compared to some of the PEBA variations which can be a bit punchy and a little bit too energetic and a bit too angry to really settle into a nice kind of soft platform like this. So yeah, I think I've been pretty happy with this one overall. I think it's going to be pretty democratic. I think a lot of people are going to be able to get used out of this either as a kind of stock standard daily trainer if you really like soft shoes, or as that kind of recovery run moving into daily training paces if you need something which is going to pamper the legs when they're feeling a bit sore. So yeah, pretty happy with this one so far. Moving down to the outsole, we've got a pretty decent covering here of CPU rubber. Fair bit of exposed midsole foam kind of in and amongst it, but I'm pretty happy with the grip so far. CPU rubber has a pretty good reputation of lasting well. This is definitely a little bit of a firmer compound, so I don't think it's going to wear down as quickly as something like the Leaning Challenger, which did have a little bit of a problem, especially focusing the wear on the outside edge. Here, I'm not seeing any wear after 60 Ks of honest wear in the city. Maybe a little bit of fraying of the exposed foam, but I do think that is just going to be superficial, isn't going to actually play into the overall durability of the shoe. In terms of the overall durability of this shoe, in terms of the midsole foam as well, I'm not certain that this is going to be the longest lasting. After 60Ks, it hasn't really shown any sign of wear or kind of dying out, but just in terms of the reputation of PIBA EVA blends, especially coming from the Rebel V5 from New Balance, which does tend to die off quite quickly, I'm not going to be putting a heap of confidence in this one as that kind of big durable trainer which can just log hundreds and hundreds of Ks. I do think that in the scheme of things, if I had to put money on this for myself, this is probably going to be a shoe which would go 500, 600 Ks rather than 700, 800 Ks and beyond. So just do keep that in mind if you're someone who's a fair bit heavier or you're using it on some kind of harsher surfaces. Don't be buying this thinking that this is going to be the kind of ultimate long-lasting trainer. That is just my little insight there. I'm not sure that this is going to be, a kind of invincible shoe. Coming around to the price point here in Australia, there's two different ways that you can get your hands on this shoe. The first is the more established way through AliExpress. You can pick this up for around $98, which is ridiculous when you consider that this is kind of competing with the likes of the Novablast 5, the Miro Plus, I guess kind of full super foamed max cushion shoes, although I think this shoe is better than both of them. Coming in around 2.5 times cheaper is insane. If you wanted to take that a step further, you could go on Taobao and pick it up for around about 50 or 60 Australian dollars also, if you're willing to put in the extra effort of some auto translating and sorting out shipping and everything else like that. Could be worth it if you're really looking to pick up a really nice shoe for a ridiculously low price, pretty much a sixth of what you would pay for the kind of Western equivalent. Coming around to a few quick comparisons to run through. The first is the Novablast 5, which is a shoe I absolutely despise. Realistically, on paper, and I guess to a lot of people, these will feel quite similar because they're quite soft. They've got a good deal of foam to them. They're fairly light. So I do kind of understand that they are quite similar in that sense, but I really hated the Novablast because it didn't have that rebound. This solves that for me, and I think that if this was released as the Novablast 6 with an ASICS logo on it instead of the dunking Jordan, I do reckon this shoe would go crazy in Australia. So that would be my encouragement. If you're thinking about grabbing a pair of Chinese shoes, this would probably be the one to try out. I think that this would be the most popular if a lot of people got their hands on it. Next one is the Rebel V5, quite similar I guess in terms of the PIBA blend EVA, more flexible base, a little bit softer unplated feel. This kind of feels like a beefed up version of that with a bit of extra bounce and a bit of extra protection. So I do think there is going to be a bit of crossover in fans there. You could say that it feels a little bit like an unplated SC trainer, but again, I just think that this PIBA blend has a lot more guts to it, a lot more rebound than whatever New Balance are doing with their fuel cell foam. Compared to the Wind 3TR, also from Qiaodan, which is more of the kind of stock standard daily trainer, I do think this shoe feels a bit more protective, a bit more rocket, a bit more gutsy underfoot, whereas the Wind 3TR comes across as a more simple, flexible, more kind of nimble, everyday daily trainer, more of a kind of Mark 6 competitor, I would say. This is definitely coming across as a bit more of a kind of built-up model, which I do think will appeal to a few more people. If I was picking up the pace, I would probably move towards the Wind 3TR with a bit more of a kind of grounded feel, but staying comfortable, staying protective, I think the Leili does have the advantage. Final comparison, because I know a few of you will ask, is to the Qiaodan from Dynafish, which is the new kind of shoe to beat, I guess, on the market. Super trainer, 209 grams, TPEE foam, just ridiculously good. I've done about 40 Ks in that now, have loved every single kilometer of it. It is pretty hard to beat, and I will say that this is not quite on that same level, but it doesn't really have to be. It's not really made to be that kind of shoe, but in some cases I do think it gets kind of close. In daily training, just kind of ticking the legs over slowly, I think both of the shoes feel quite nice. They've got that smooth compression, a little bit of rebound, and they do feel quite fun. A little bit of flex through the forefoot I do think helps as well, but I do think the Qiaodan is a step up when it comes to that kind of more sustained daily training paces, pushing into zone 3, and if you want to go into kind of tempo zones, it's just so light and airy and it just disappears underfoot and it's so smooth, and that shoe's just amazing. This is probably a step away from that. Not quite on that kind of super shoe tier level, I would say. So yeah, bringing that all together, I have been a pretty big fan of the Leili 1.0. Not a shoe I was expecting to enjoy straight out of the box. I was expecting it to be a bit too soft, a bit too compressive, but I do think they've done a really good job of tuning the foam to work really nicely in this package. It doesn't feel too mushy, it doesn't feel too bulky, it's smooth, it's comfortable, it's got a bit of pop to it, a little bit of flex, it just kind of feels right. I've been pretty happy with this one so far. It's probably going to be the shoe that I would recommend the most to people looking to try out their first Chinese daily trainer. I've had a lot of requests for a shoe exactly like this, protective, comfortable, just kind of easy going. And this is going to be, I think, the perfect solution for that. So yeah, if you can get your hands on it, I really encourage you to do so. I reckon Qiaodan is coming together as one of the higher performing Chinese brands that I've come across, especially in the daily training department. Everybody's got a pretty good super shoe, but I think they're kind of rounding it out nicely with some good cushion models to kind of back the performance up as well. So yeah, good stuff from Qiaodan. Keep an eye out for some more reviews. I've got like 20 left to do before the end of the year. So yeah, check them out as well.